Hey, well, hey, welcome back to the podcast. Even though I walk, I am still your host, Steve Mills, and live and on location. I guess I'm not live because this is being, I am live, but it's also being recorded. So when you see it, it won't be live. I will still be alive, I think.
It's live right now.
I'm live right
We're
now.
live.
Yes, we are live. We are in Arlington, Texas at Milcon Creator, Mil Creator Con,
Military Creator Con.
Military Creator Con. And Hilary and I go back at least 30 minutes.
At least.
I mean,
It was live back then too.
It was, yes. And if I keep going, I may not be live much longer. But, the beauty of being here at conventions and events like this is you run into so many different people, and so many people who have interesting stories and backgrounds.
Mm-hmm.
And I held the door open for you, and I was like, what is holistically speaking? And so then that sparked a comment where you work with trauma, and you started speaking my nerdy language, the amygdala and the neurons and all that. And in my research in PTSD and combat stress, it's very similar. So I was like, what the heck? Let's have a conversation.
I love to nerd out on neuroscience, so let's do it. And I love that. I was saying to you earlier when we just met, I said, what made you approach me? What made you come up to me? And, you looked at my name tag, but I honestly think a lot of times this is just life's a falling into, like the right people you meet at the right time. And so I take that quite seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. For me, it's a divine appointment. And I try to think every person I talk to is a divine appointment, but some you just connect with rather quickly. And then again, we started talking about all the stuff that we help people with, which in turn helps us, because that's what is really happening, right?
That's right. We're of service to others.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell us about Hilary, and you have a very unique background, and I'm going to give a teaser. You were a newscaster,
as a television news anchor and reporter. Yep.
And you're a military spouse, and you were on air on 9/11.
I was. I was a military spouse for 11 years. And I think that experience of living a civilian life and then going into a military life was quite shocking for somebody like myself. But what it did for me is it really created the space of such respect for our military servicemen and women and families, because we're, they say the military, you come home to your family, right? We're part of the whole collective and community. And during that time, while I was a young journalist as well, we were living on the Air Force Base, Barksdale in Shreveport, Louisiana, where at the time President Bush flew from Florida, where he was reading to the children, to Barksdale, and our entire base was on lockdown, and to the fact to where I couldn't even get back on the base. I was working at a news station about an hour and a half away as a morning news anchor. And then, I was a young journalist covering the news on an event that nobody knew was going on. And not even understanding what it meant to have a dysregulated nervous system and dealing with things that were so outside of the realm of possibility that I even understood. And also, like, where's my husband at the time? Where is he? Is he okay? What do you mean the president's going to Barksdale Air Force Base? Of course, I go into a mode of I'm trying to share news with people of an event we had no idea what was going on, wondering where my husband was, but also I'm a New Yorker. So where's my family? So I had all these different things coming at me and not really understanding how to process this at the time, not even understanding things like nervous system regulation, secondary traumatic stress, which are two, like secondary trauma is one area that I cover a lot now in what I do because I lived the experience. So now I want to help people through the experience.
And I forgot to tell you, so what I do now is I'm a hospice chaplain, and I see secondary trauma from the caregivers.
Yes.
And often the patient has accepted that they're dying, but the families struggle so much. And so I'm right there. And then I keep an eye on myself and our other staff because we love all of our patients, but we love some a little bit more. We get attached. That's just the truth. And so we have to be careful. And so I try to keep an eye on them. But, and yes, it's a heartbreakingly rewarding job.
It is, and that is such an important area that you are focusing on with our caregivers, and that is an area I love to work in because especially as we're seeing the senior generation, it's a whole different field now. It's a whole different experience because I consider myself part of that sandwich generation where you might have children that you're caring for, but now you're in the place where you're caring for a senior adult, a parent,
Mhm.
and you become the adult. And I witness that a lot too with the clientele I see, and also when I'm doing group workshops and corporate workshops or any kind of workshops where we're in a group, that we need to have these shared experiences and be able to talk about it openly because like you said, the person who is moving and transitioning to that next stage of life, even if it's end of life, they're usually not the ones that need the support more. It's the ones
Mhm.
like, how do I deal with the estate? I'm losing my mother, my father. They have Alzheimer's or dementia. They're not even cognitively there. And there's so much grief and loss before the actual grief and loss
Yes.
happens. Right. And it's very important that people have tools and techniques and support to be able to, what I say, be kind to your mind. So,
Yes.
yeah.
And heart.
Yes.
And but one of the things I get often is when the person passes, the caregiver will tell me, "I feel guilty, but I'm thankful they're gone."
Yeah.
And I
That's a big
tell
one.
them it's because you love them.
Yeah.
You saw them suffer and you didn't want that.
Right.
And then, as you well know, emotions is just a big ball of goo
Yeah.
that just one day you accept it, the next day you don't. Then you're angry and then you're sad. But so tell us about Hilary Russo.
And I'll say one other
Oh,
thing on that. I do, and I will. Caregiving, you were talking about the family caregiver, but there's also the caregivers that are the nurses and the practitioners and the counselors and the people that are hearing it and dealing with it every day. And I think that's a group that is so in need of support because a lot of times when you're in business of being of service,
hmm
the one person you forget about is yourself. So that goes into talking about what I do, and I'd love to be
yes.
able to share that.
Yeah.
So about holistically speaking, holistically, it's a play on words, holistic.
Yep.
Holistically speaking is my company, my business. And what I do is I'm a holistic mental health practitioner. Coming from the world of media, I still work in media. I'm a health journalist as well, but I do have this beautiful, I feel being of service to be a trauma informed practitioner. And I'm also a trainer of work called havening techniques. Havening is a transitive verb for the word haven, a safe
hmm
place. We create safe places all around us all the time. The car we drive, the home we live in, the neighborhood, the people. But the one piece of imminent domain we forget about is this one right here.
hmm
And so havening being a neuroscience based approach that uses touch and positive thought and pleasant distraction to rapidly rewire the brain. And you can self-apply it. So this isn't an approach where you have to go to your counselor or your therapist to use it. It's wonderful to do that, obviously, if you're working through trauma, because you never want to do trauma work alone. But the idea of this is that it's a technique that you are building agency using. So when little things happen, or when you need to just downregulate your emotions, or remind yourself that you're building a better partnership with your amygdala or your
hmm
nervous system, that you can do this simple self soothing tool, which actually releases oxytocin, the love hormone,
hmm
touch, serotonin, dopamine, GABA, and it also produces more delta waves in your brain. And delta waves are the slowest moving brain waves we have. This is sleep state. This is where you go in sleep state. So imagine being able to release this delta wave deliciousness, as I call it, so that you can calm your mind and remind your nervous system that you're safe, because it really is all about safety, and be able to use this tool anywhere at any time to just be kind to your mind, or as I call it, a hug for your amygdala, right? Yeah.
So walk us through what havening would look like because it's the first time I'd heard that
Yeah.
term.
Mhm.
But as a guy who has been downrange to Iraq and Afghanistan, came back I don't have PTSD, but I do have anxiety
Sure.
attacks. And I had a big one about 3 years ago.
Mm.
And I was at an air show. They did a demo of the December 7th attack, and it caught me off guard. And I've got a podcast coming up called All I Wanted Was a Cheeseburger. So, because I had this cheeseburger and I wanted to eat it, and I was frozen. I
Yeah.
couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And but I reminded myself, I'm like, I'm safe.
Yeah.
I'm not going to die. I remembered the words of my counselor. You may feel like you're going to die, but you're not. And again, I made it home somehow. I'm not sure. But then 2 years later, I went back to the same air show and faced that. And
That's
but
great. Well, you hit on something really important. First of all, congratulations. And I give you a lot of credit for being able to be aware, because that's really the first step. Awareness is the first step to any change, right? So the moment you were holding that cheeseburger, and then you had that moment where you said, I'm safe. I'm not going to die. I'm not in danger in this moment. You were able to walk yourself off the ledge, right?
mhm,
And havening is really good for this too, because that first step is awareness. And what you're doing in that moment is building a beautiful relationship with your brain and your nervous system. It's not about forgetting that something happened that might have been traumatic. It's about saying, okay, this is the story, but it happened, ED. It's not happening, ING,
mhm,
right? And when you realize that we're not asking people to forget the story. We're saying you don't have to live in this story. You can actually turn the page and write a new chapter. And how beautiful is that you have the ability to take pen and paper and be the author of your own story, the architect of your own life, right? So the simplicity of it is that you take that awareness step and you're like, okay, I'm just going to do this touch, which is like you're washing your hands. I'll show it to your audience. Wash it, and you can do it too.
oh,
Just like you are washing your hands or giving yourself a gentle hug from your shoulders to your elbows or even on your face. There's no choreography. Most guys I talk to are probably not going to want to do this at first, especially in public, but it's a nurturing touch. But the thing is, you can sit there and do this under your desk. You know, if you're feeling a little stressed about something or overwhelmed, you do this, people don't know what you're doing anyway. But what makes it havening is you're pairing the touch with a positive thought or a pleasant distraction. So if you were to, in that moment with the hamburger, look around and maybe just count the planes or start looking for people that are wearing hats, or hum a song that might be
hmm,
calming to you. Or even if you were to close your eyes, and if you're a good visualizer, you could take yourself to the most amazing vacation you had. So what you're doing is you're basically like a tour guide with your amygdala, which only knows one thing, and it's to keep you safe and out of danger, that part of your brain in the limbic system. And when you do that, the amygdala is going to feel a sense of safety. It doesn't feel like it's a threat because it doesn't know time or space.
mhm,
So if you build that agency where you're like, I'm going to take my amygdala here, then your nervous system starts to calm. Your heart rate slows, right? Your breath slows down. Your hands aren't clammy. Maybe you're shaking and now you're not because you're actively doing the touch and nobody's knowing what you're doing. Right. So that's what havening does. And then when you're working with a practitioner, maybe deeper issues, a certified practitioner, it can de-encode trauma.
hmm,
And I think that's really what makes havening very special. While you can use it in your own life on your own, self-haven, when you are working with a trauma-informed practitioner or a practitioner of havening, they can actually either facilitate the touch on you with consent, or you can sit there and do it to yourself. And we can work through the deeper underlying issues that are very difficult to work on your own. As you know, as a chaplain, somebody working of service,
mhm.
doing trauma work on your own is not a good idea, right?
I would say it's impossible.
It is. You need someone to mirror back what you might not see in yourself in the moment,
Yeah.
then give you tools and challenges and tasks to work on during that time outside the session, right? But being able to de-encode trauma is it actually weakens the neurons, the synapse between the neurons. To get all nerdy on neuroscience, that's why the word is called depotentiating, to get nerdy for the science people out there. It
We'll
was
see if the captions will pick
right.
that one
Try
up.
picking that one up. It's a real word. It's a scientific word, but you're building new neural pathways, and
Hmm.
it's depotentiating the amygdala. weakening what's going on with the amygdala, taking that response and fight, flight, freeze, or fawn.
So as a Christian chaplain, one of the things, and I'm trying to remember if I did this in that panic attack, but the podcast is based off of Psalm 23.
Mm,
And the crux is, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and it's literally deepest darkness, I fear no evil, for you're with me. And the key word is with.
mm,
So fast forward 2 years later, I know I'm going back to that air show. They're going to have the same event, but this time I put into place some safeguards.
mm.
And I knew I had a friend that was going to be at the air show as well. And I told her about it, and she's a hospice nurse, and she said, "You call, you text, I'll come running."
Yeah.
And just knowing that
Having partnership or
helped with that. And then I often use, "The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. He leads me beside quiet waters."
mm,
And I visualize that, and I use a VR technology quite a bit with my patients. And so we'll play a scene of a brook,
yeah.
just a gentle brook, and physically can just see the tension leave. But then I think, yeah, that's great for them, but what about me? What about the trauma I take in?
Yeah,
And
that's right. That's secondary traumatic
yeah,
stress. You're hearing everybody else's stories,
and
right?
again, I've been doing this long enough. I have safeguards in place, both personally and professionally. And I reach out. I've got several folks that we talk quite often. Got a couple of buddies. We send memes and pictures back and forth, and I find that laughter is huge and
Yes.
is
Humor
part of
is
it.
very important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So havening, so self-touch, and not to make it sound trite, but find that happy place.
Well, yeah, and that's the whole thing. Like with traditional therapy, and we look for well-being, there are three different types of well-being. We have psychopharmacology, right? We have medications that can help people if they have chemical imbalance. We have psychotherapy, which is talk therapy, and then we have psychosensory. And psychosensory is where Havening falls. It's a complementary alternative medicine. It is neuroscience based, and by doing this, what you're using your own senses to change the brain. And I think a lot of times we think neuroscience has to be hard, and it doesn't. Your body and your brain and your entire nervous system is designed as a perfect vehicle.
Hmm.
And if we just take a moment to realize that and realize, imagine the amount of agency you have and the resilience that you can build to build a resilience landscape in your mind and your body by doing something and putting tools in the toolbox that can help you, whatever it might be. There are many different. Haven is just one of them. Imagine how much more of a resilient life you can live,
Yep.
right? And, I think what's really beautiful about this, you mentioned humor. And it's funny, I have a framework, I have a program called Hug It Out. And Hug It Out is actually an acronym for in the healing, we have humor, understanding, and gratitude. And it's not for those things outside of ourselves, but in those moments where, oh my God, I didn't eat the cheeseburger. And at the time I was really kind of freaking out. You look back on that now and you're like, you even laughed about it. You were like kind of laughing about the cheeseburger moment at the air show.
Hmm.
So we realize that in the moment, maybe it's really hard to have the humor. But when we can look back and be like, all right, maybe it wasn't as bad as it is. And what's the lesson I learned from that? So that's the humor. The understanding is who we are, how we show up in the world. What are our core values? If we had a walk-in song that played when we walked into a room or on stage, what would it be for you, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, so we
Yes.
have the H, which is humor, U is understanding, G is the gratitude for self. We talk a lot about gratitude outside of ourselves. I'm grateful for my home, my family, my career, whatever it might be. But when's the last time did you sit there? When was the last time you actually said, Steve, what you're grateful for about you? And the more gratitude we put out there, that brings more gratitude. And the more you can sit there and say, you know what, I'm grateful for who I am. I'm grateful that I do this podcast that serves so many people and share communication and message. I'm grateful that I make a great ribeye steak, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to
Which
be any. Do
I
you?
do. I do.
Of course. See,
It's
I just knew this. But like even the small things like that, when we have gratitude for self, it begets more gratitude. And then we build more resilience. So this is how we hug it out with ourselves.
mhm,
We talk about hugging it out with others all the time. Like,
right.
oh, all right, you guys had a little upset. Just hug it out. When's the last time you hugged it out and made amends with your own mind? That's the hug it out moment. That's the method.
Yeah, it's interesting in that a number of years ago, uh, as a chaplain, as a pastor, and really just as a human, it's easy to put that mask on.
Yeah.
You go into work, and people have these expectations of what a chaplain should be like.
Hmm.
Now, I quickly dispel that within about 5 minutes. And the reason is I stopped wearing that mask. I read a book by Gary Smalley called The DNA of Relationships, and he talked about your core fear.
Mm-hmm.
And if a pack of wild dogs came in here, I'd be the first one to attack them. If something else came in, but if a snake came through that door, you're on your own. I'm out. But that's not the that's
There's
not
a
the
little
core
humor
fear.
there.
It's
That's the humor.
and there's always truth in humor.
Yes, there is.
So
We laugh about it,
we
but
do. But my core fear was the fear of being rejected.
yes, that's
And so I would
safety.
respond with sarcastic humor
Mhm.
and withdraw. But when I became aware of that, I'm like, okay, so this is what the world gets.
Mhm.
And then there's a verse where Jesus says, what's the greatest commandment? Love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love others as you love yourself.
Mm.
And, to say the things that I like about me or my strengths, it sounds like arrogance or pride, but it's really not. It's honesty,
Yes.
and it's confidence, and it's truth.
Yeah.
There are things I'm very good at. Ribeye steaks. My family will tell you,
I don't know how I came up with that, but
don't go to a steakhouse. Have one of Dad's
what were the
steaks.
steaks,
It's
right?
yes. And then there's other things I'm not good at, and I'm okay with that. But I like that hug,
Yeah,
humor, understanding,
hug it out.
and gratitude.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm thankful. My wife and I will celebrate our 39th anniversary coming up, and I'm thankful with gratitude that she's stuck with me. 23 moves. We did a do-it-yourself move that we still don't talk about, and I may need to edit that one out because
No, leave in that humor.
it was rough.
Leave in that humor because you learn from it, right?
Yes.
You learn from it. And I think that's great that you're grateful for her. You're grateful for the experience, the 39 years. Congratulations. What is Steve grateful for about himself?
Exactly. And I'm
How
working on
often?
that.
And that's
Yeah.
so important. Like, we really tend to forget about our own appreciation. And when are we going to high-five ourselves and be our own cheerleaders?
Hmm.
It's really important. So when I came up with this framework, and I'm working on a book now, which I'm really excited about, on the Hug It Out method, I want these tools to be available to people. And then within the method, there are different tools that we can use. Havening being one of them, but there are many.
Hmm.
There are many ways that we show up for ourselves and put things in the toolbox, or I call it the brain candy jar. Like sometimes you want a chocolate, sometimes you want a peppermint, much like sometimes when you're putting up a shelf, you might need a hammer or you might need a screwdriver. You also might need somebody else holding the other side, so we need help. You might need a level. So it's really realizing what you need.
Hmm.
And it's going to be different for everybody, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the caregiving business, we call it self-care.
Yes.
What are you doing to take care of you? And I typically look at that as an external activity,
Mm,
but really it needs to be an internal activity as well
absolutely.
to think about, okay, so what was it about that particular death or that experience that is affecting me,
Mm,
and to acknowledge. So one of the not one of the most traumatic events that I dealt with in February of 2022. So I was stationed at Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, and I was the senior chaplain for the shore installations for the Navy, and then so I did a lot of administrative management, all the stuff that I
mm,
didn't want to do. But then we had a little base over on the island of Kauai that I took care of. I was their chaplain.
nice.
I'm like, yeah,
Uh,
yeah, it
that sounds good.
wasn't a bad gig.
Not a bad thing.
And it's a small community, and I got to know a lot of locals and the folks on the base. And we get a call that on February 20th, a helicopter crashed and all 4 people on board were killed. And I knew 2 of them. So myself and one of my colleagues and 3 counselors, we fly over, and it's intense. I mean, I'm at a house with probably 15 family members, and they're just wailing. They're just, and it's so heartbreaking. And then we go through, and one of the people who died, she had a 5 or 6 year old daughter. And again, the five of us were just going all over and taking care of people. We get through we do the memorial service and the finality of it. And then we all go back to Oahu. But we also decided we're going back in a month, not for them, but for us. And we went back and we visited the site and we drove up through the canyon. And Hillary, I have never laughed so hard in my life. There were four of us at that point. We were crying. Just silly things were setting us off. And it was all those emotions coming out.
Yeah.
And the humor, and the things that we were laughing about, people would look at it and go, how's that funny? But again, it was
It's a shared
that
experience.
shared experience.
Right.
And
And you're emoting. The tears are an emotion that you have a shared experience.
mhm,
Like I said before, there's so many caregivers or people that are providing a service of someone else's care that tend to forget about themselves. And you're dealing with so much secondary traumatic stress that I wish I knew what that was when I was a young news anchor. And I'm glad I know what it is now. And I speak about STS a lot because there's STS, there's compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma. And if we don't realize how it's impacting us, many times it comes home with us. And we might see it as burnout or overwhelm, or you're short with the kids. Is it really because you're short with the kids because they're acting out, or you're dysregulated in the emotion from what you just dealt with? So I think it's really good to have a team of people that you can rely on.
mhm,
And also, like, really, when you're in the caregiving world or counseling world, like, separate out your sessions a little bit to give yourself a little time in between. You can be doing havening for 5 minutes in between
mhm.
just to reset. We don't reset enough.
Yes.
And that's very important. It doesn't have to be like a whole namaste all day. It could just be like, I'm just going to take a minute to read scripture, or I'm going to
Mhm.
take a second to do havening and read scripture, because that's a distraction, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe I'm just going to take a walk around my office building a little bit, or ground myself and go outside and listen to the sound of nature. The moment we realize that we have that awareness, we can move into a state of allowing. Allowing moves to a state of alignment, right? So it's the
Mm.
triple A's, right? I call it triple A's within the Hug It Out framework. You're aware first. And once you're aware, you allow for a new way of being. When you allow for a new way of being, then you align with this new way of being. And it only can go that way. You can't be, do, have. You can't have, do, be. You have to be, do, have.
Mhm.
It goes that direction, right? Many times people want to have
Yes.
first.
Yes.
I want to heal. I want to be rich. I want to find a partner. You can want all you want, but if you're not being that what you want, it's very hard to go the opposite way,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So it always starts with an awareness.
I need to connect you or send you the information to a company called Helium, Healium.
Okay.
And they use VR headsets. And this is where I got
I
into
love
the
this
VR.
already.
And they have these experiences and they're in John Hopkins, I think the Mayo Clinic, a lot of VA hospitals now, where patients will put these on, and it, like you were saying, reframes the brain. So I think you would be interested
Very much
in
so.
that.
So add the touch element to it.
Yes.
Could you imagine what could happen when you are, because the reason why touch, and I didn't explain this, the reason why havening works with touch is because touch is a safety, it's a love hormone, right? It's a hug
Mm-hmm.
hormone. It's releasing oxytocin, serotonin, dopamine, GABA. When we touch, we have these C-tactile fibers on our hands. So anything you touch, you're like, oh, I like the texture, or I don't. And so when you touch in these three areas, what we found is that you are producing more hertz of delta waves this way. And delta being sleep. So you're calming and it's producing more delta and less of the gamma. Gamma are your really fast brain waves.
Okay.
That's like if you're eating that cheeseburger and all systems are
Mm-hmm.
off, right? Or go. If you are really focused on a task, you might be in alpha waves, like it moves from gamma down to delta. So delta is because there's more C-tactile fibers touching the face, shoulders to arms to hands.
Yeah, the brain is
Amazing.
amazing and so mysterious. And one last plug for helium. It was
Love
started
it.
by a TV reporter who, out of Columbia, Missouri, Sarah Hill, who herself was experiencing that secondary trauma. So that was the genesis of that. And now it's just incredible what they're doing.
Unbelievable. And I can
Yeah.
see how that connection, because I remember being a young journalist watching the news feeds, because my story of how 9/11 really changed things for me. I was living in Louisiana at the time, 1,000 miles away from family up in New York City. Husband at the time, 100 miles away at a different base because I worked far away from where we lived. And I got a call from my dad at like 8. When was the first plane? It was like 8:50 something. And he
Hmm.
said, "Are you at work?" And I said, "Dad, I'm getting ready. Why are you calling me right before? You know I have to be there at 9." He goes, "Turn on the TV." I turned on the TV and I hear voices I recognize, but I thought it was like Independence Day. I thought it was a movie that was on because I'm getting ready doing my thing. I'm watching and I'm like, why is he having me turn on Channel 4? And I'm watching NBC because I worked for an NBC affiliate, and I hear Katie Couric's voice. I hear Matt Lauer's voice, and I turn and he goes, "You need to get to work right now." I got in my car. He said a plane just hit the tower. I got to the station before the second plane hit. Like, I don't know how fast
Wow.
I was going, but because I lived very close, and I got there and I'm watching it on the news feeds. Every single one of us standing in that newsroom have no idea what just happened, except that something happened. And I'm taking all that information in as a young journalist. And then every half hour on the hour, I'm on the news desk giving people an update, still not understanding what's going on, wondering where my family is in two
Hmm.
different areas. And then the stories I had to cover following that. I'm taking in that secondary traumatic stress. Much are my viewers
Hmm.
listening to me talk about what I just shared. So it's a collective experience, you know? And I had no idea how it was affecting me when I got home at night.
Hmm.
And none of us did. None of us
Right.
did, you know?
Yeah. I
So,
mean, and that had to, not probably not realizing at the time that it was affecting you because we're all at that age, we're all invincible.
right. I
But
get tunnel
then,
vision.
but then when things settle down, that's when it starts to
That's exactly
come in.
right. I mean, like I said, was married to a military
Yeah.
member, and while we have such respect for each other to this day, I can imagine not having the tools we needed at the time. N Who knows what could have been different? You know, I'm not saying I'm blaming it on 9/11, but when we lack tools and awareness and know how to work through problems and have, partnership, whether it's our partner, our intimate partnership or partnership around us that can help us through these things, we need community and connection. But when we have no understanding of what's going on in our nervous system, we are gonna go into safety mode first. It is like timeout, get out. We're not hugging it
Hmm.
out.
Yeah. And,
No.
and I've seen many combat vets or, folks come back from combat vastly different. And they're young couples
Mm,
at the time, there weren't really the tools to help them deal with that. Go see the chaplain. Go
right.
see the psychiatrist, who we call the wizard. Go see the wizard, and they don't want to go see the wizard because then they could get their clearance and get their weapons taken away. And so they just dealt with it, but they didn't deal with it, and then their marriages break up.
Yeah.
And you mentioned an incredibly important aspect of community and connection. And to use a good corporate word, circling back.
As Dennis,
I
very
know.
corporate.
It's funny.
Just circling back
I
on,
just
dot, dot,
yes,
dot.
right.
Right.
Per my
Per
last
my
email,
last email, which
yeah,
is a little passive aggressive, but
which means, hey,
hey,
I s
get back to me.
yeah. But that key word in that verse, with, being with one another. And, just within the last month, I've either had the occasion to have lunch or dinner, with some of my buddies that I was downrange with. And one guy I hadn't seen for 12 years,
Mm,
but it was like yesterday. And the embrace was closer than any brothers. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. And then coming here,
yeah,
and it's not something specific, but just being around the vets
yeah.
and having that culture, having that connection.
Absolutely. And I was just having this conversation a little earlier because, look, I've been away from the service for a long time now. I'm almost 20 years, 15, 20 years as a military spouse. However, I mean, I'm in partnership. My boyfriend is government worker for 30 years. So somehow life's a circle. You come back to it. Can't get away from it.
I know.
And works for the Navy as well. So coming to this event, I realized, wow, I forgot just how we really are a family. Doesn't matter what branch you're in, doesn't matter what, I mean, in the moment we like, you get
Oh,
on each other for the different,
absolutely.
but we're all of service, whether you're the active duty member, the spouse, the supporter. When you are connected to the military community, it really is a family. And I've noticed there's so much give. There's so much give. Like people are collaborating, sharing stories, giving. It's not competition. It's not like you see in the corporate world. It's very
No,
different. And I feel like I'm home.
that's a perfect way to put it because,
Home is where the Air
w-
Force sends you, Navy sends you. It
yes.
really, every branch sends you. We all say that, but it is home. It really is home.
Well, when someone asks my kids, so where are you from? My son will say, which time?
Right. What
Yeah,
tour of duty?
where? Yeah.
Right.
Well, listen, we could talk all
Yeah.
day on this stuff, and you've been very kind and gracious to have this conversation. I hope we can have some more
I would love that.
because
And this was such a nice falling into.
it was, and I want to read your book when it's finished, and then we'll talk some more about that.
I'd love
But
that.
thank you so much.
Thank you for sharing the time with me too.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I appreciate it. I appreciate you. We've got these sweet coffee mugs, even though I walk. Shoot me a DM if you would like one. And be sure to hit like and subscribe. And as always, keep walking.